Another wild night in the WNBA. We are speeding toward All-Star, and the Chicago Sky are as intriguing as ever. Hope Perry talking to us about the Sky, but first we'll take you around the league. Locked On Women's Basketball starts now.
You are Locked On Women's Basketball, your daily podcast on women's basketball. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Everyone, and happy Tuesday. Welcome to Locked On Women's Basketball. I'm your host, Howard Megdal, and I want to thank you for making us your first listen every day. You guys keep showing up for us. Over 350,000 people last month alone listening to the podcast the way we show up for you, not just 6 days a week anymore. We've got team-specific shows on the Valkyries, on the Fever, you name it, it's coming to you through the Locked On Women's Basketball podcast. It is, of course, not just me. It is the entire team over at The Next, at thenexthoops.com. You can subscribe and get everything right to your inbox. $9 a month, $72 a year. Just subscribe, support the work, the incredible people like Hope Perry, who covers the Chicago Sky for us. And she'll be joining us a little later on in the show, talking about Angel Reese, who the craziest thing. The game ended last night. She just grabbed another rebound. So we're going to talk about the history and what it is that she is doing, which is beyond the pale. I don't really have points of comparison, but we'll get into it. But first, I want to take you around the league. And first, I want to take you to our Cameron Ruby, who was on site for the LA Sparks, who had a big breakthrough win. We're going to talk and hear from her a little bit about it. So Cameron, take it away.
Hi from Crypto.com, where the Sparks got a much-needed win today against the Connecticut Sun. Big performances from Rickea Jackson and Azurá Stevens, as well as Kelsey Plum, and a game-deciding or game-solidifying block from Dearica Hamby in the final seconds in what Lynn Roberts is calling a championship play. Big win today for the Sparks, and hopefully they can continue the momentum.
Interesting to think about the Sparks, who are 7-14 now, 3 games out of that final playoff spot with the Golden State Valkyries. Golden State looked like they had solidified some things early on, but our Michelle Smith, the Hall of Famer, is here to tell us about how last night there are just some further reasons for concern in Valhalla. Michelle, take it away.
Hey there, basketball fans. This is Michelle Smith from The Next, and I am at the Chase Center tonight, where Phoenix pulled off a 78-77 win over the home team Golden State Valkyries. It was another loud, raucous night in Valhalla, but it was Alyssa Thomas's free throw at the end of the game that seals the deal for Phoenix. So Golden State, they are a team that was sitting pretty in playoff position just a couple weeks ago, but with 4 losses in 5 games, they're now under 500 for the first time in about a month. And they have got to put some things back together on the defensive end. They gave up a 22-point night from Dewana Bonner, and they are reeling a little bit from this loss. This was a game they felt like they could win with Phoenix having Satu Sabali and Kalia Copper out of the lineup. So it's back to the drawing board at Golden State, and we will see you next time.
Our Tia Reed has talked about the extent to which Phoenix's depth is better than expected. Again, Mercury right there now. They're half a game ahead of New York for that number 2 seed. To be right there in the mix with New York is a big deal as we head into the All-Star break. Liberty, of course, are getting back Jonquel Jones soon, and that takes them to potentially a different level, as we saw earlier this year. Everyone, though, still chasing the Minnesota Lynx, number 1 overall seed right now. Our Terry Horseman was there last night for Minnesota's win over Chicago. Terry, what did you hear?
What's up, Locked On Women's Basketball? This is your Minnesota Lynx beat reporter, Terry Horseman, checking in on the road here in beautiful Chicago at the Wintrust Arena, where the Lynx got back in the win column tonight, beating the Sky by a final score of 91-78. After the game, Courtney Williams talked about having an even bigger chip on her shoulder than normal, given the Y'all Ain't Beat Chicago comments from an earlier Stud Bud stream that kind of became the poster child of the post-game coverage on Saturday, as this loss. Courtney, 8 rebounds to go with 18 points, 7 assists, 4 steals. And the Lynx, 14 steals tonight. That's a season high. Forced 10 of 20 turnovers in the fourth quarter. 24 points total off of turnovers, really making the difference in this game tonight. Win puts the Lynx at 19-4. One game back home in Minneapolis on Wednesday before the All-Star break. We'll see you there.
Just a small request, Courtney. My younger daughter is asking for the Stud Bud stream to also be available on YouTube. Just want to put it out there. She's mentioned that she thinks that would be a useful thing for your show. But the streaming aside, it's hard to argue that things could have gone any better for Minnesota so far this year. 19-4. Best in the league, net rating, offensively, defensively as well. Cheryl Reeve recovering from obviously being traded as a coach in the All-Star game, but I think she's going to be okay. And she's going to be coaching ultimately Team Phi this weekend in Indiana against Sandy Brondello's Team Clark. Going to be a lot of fun to watch. But then after the fun, second half is coming here, and the Minnesota Lynx have an opportunity potentially to add to the end of that bench. Alyssa Peely was waived just before contract became fully vested for the duration of the season. Going to be interesting over these next few weeks to see who can get, among others, potentially Emma Miesemann, a real difference maker. If you don't believe me, go back and watch some film of the 2019 WNBA finals for details. So it is a really compelling time for the very top of this league right now. And like I said, Phoenix obviously playing as well as anyone in the league right now. New York seems to have figured some things out over the last couple of games. Our Jackie Powell has a column coming out today about just that. Seattle and Atlanta in the battle for that 4 spot. And again, Indiana now back over 500, along with the Washington Mystics, who are just, multiple rookies on the All-Star team. A really interesting. I mean, look, the Mystics are kind of blowing the rebuild here by winning all these games and ruining their draft position. But a team that doesn't have to worry about that so much, the Chicago Sky, who have given up their own draft pick coming into 2026 as part of a deal they made with the Minnesota Lynx. However, a deal that they made that stems to the original acquisition, allowing them to move up and select Angel Reese, who, while I was talking about other teams, they're not even playing a game right now. She collected 4 more rebounds. I don't even know how she was able to do that. The game is not even taking place. So we'll be back after this talking to Hope Perry, who covers the Chicago Sky for the Next. We're going to be talking about Angel Reese. We're going to be talking about Hailey Van Lith, and just generally speaking, looking at what Chicago is doing through the first half of the season. Back after this, I'm Howard Megdal. You're listening to Locked On Women's Basketball. Locked On Women's Basketball is brought to you by FanDuel. And summer sports are in full swing. You may not know it, but there's more than just WNBA. There is a league called Major League Baseball where they play baseball on a regular basis. There's soccer going on, not even just NWSL. They have this thing called Major League Soccer now where men get to play professional soccer, and good for them. It's about time that men got an opportunity. FanDuel gives you the way to make all the games, even men's games, more exciting. With FanDuel, you can get in on the game while your friends are getting sunburned at the beach. You can track your favorite matchups and use the app to keep it fresh with new daily promotions and fun ways to bet. Now, if you're new to FanDuel, new customers can bet just $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. Again, bet $5, get $150 if your first bet wins. Open the FanDuel app or visit FanDuel.com to get started. Howard Megdal here, Locked On Women's Basketball. I'm delighted to bring to the stage Hope Perry, who's covering the Chicago Sky for us. Hope, again, really happy to have you on the show, despite the fact that you root for the Philadelphia Eagles. We're going to overlook that today and talk about Chicago. Now, as you know, during the commercial break, Angel Reese grabbed 6 more rebounds, which is just a crazy thing considering that the game ended 14 hours ago. How is she doing this?
Yeah, Angel Reese, first of all, thanks for having me on, Howard. But Angel has been having an absolutely incredible rebounding season. And anyone who's been following her game isn't surprised by this, right? This has been her skill. And this season, there has been, more, backlash, online hate, people saying that the reason she has so many rebounds is because she's only grabbing her own misses and, saying that they're me bounds. She turned this on her head, created a whole line of merch. And there's actually been a number of folks who have crunched the numbers. And even if you take away all of the rebounds that Angel has gotten from her own misses, she's still leading the league in rebounds by far. So, I think she probably just grabbed another rebound right now. She seems to be able to do it in her sleep at this point. But it's incredibly impressive to watch every night.
The biggest thing to me, and again, we'll get back to it because I talked about this on the show. Yolanda Griffith didn't do what she's done so far. Tina Charles didn't do what she's done so far. Sylvia Fowles didn't do what she's done so far. And these are the best rebounds in the history of the league. So when we're saying she's exceeding them through halfway through year two, I mean, it should speak to the kind of history that you're seeing from her. But additionally to that is her scoring is, when you look at somebody who is hitting 52.7% of her shots over her last 8 games while she's playing almost 35 minutes a game. What is it about her offense and then what Tyler Marsh is doing to get her free and open offensively that's making a difference for her at this point?
Yeah, Angel, I'm so glad you brought up her scoring because, last season she set a record as a rookie for the number of double doubles. And I think also for consecutive double doubles, she passed the 12 held by Candace Parker, which is already super impressive. And she's on track this season with 15 double doubles already to challenge Alyssa Thomas's 28 in a season that she picked up in 2023. So yeah, Angel is not a one-dimensional player by any means. And the way that the Sky has been really opening up these opportunities for her, I mean, Tyler Marsh talks pretty frequently about how the team is unselfish and they like to move the ball around. And I think that's really evident when you see how often they're getting the ball to Reese on the inside. It's also, I was at the game against the Dallas Wings last week. And there was a sequence in the fourth quarter when Reese's contact came out after someone made contact with her face. She dropped the contact in Tyler Marsh's hand and then made a shot with only one contact in, took a foul, went down, put the contact back in, and then took free throws. So I think that if she's making the shots without the contact in, I mean, I don't know if I could make the shot with the contact in.
No.
And anyone who's saying that they can is lying. So I think that she has really shown, she's putting in so much work and there's so much grit and she loves playing. And it's just so evident from watching her game. So yes, I think it's clear that she is, playing some of the best basketball that we're seeing this season. And certainly for the Sky, that's made a big difference.
Brief digression, just a reminder to our listeners, you do not need to follow this league based on the loudest, dumbest voices. You can absolutely enjoy the fact that there are a ton of great players. You can enjoy and take pleasure in watching Angel Reese. At the same time, you're taking pleasure in enjoying Caitlin Clark and Brianna Stewart and Asia Wilson. I promise it is a yes and scenario if you want to be a basketball omnivore. I want to talk about Angel Reese's passing. Another thing that people, it's so, I don't know. It's like you're either willfully choosing to ignore her multidimensional aspects as a player, or there's something more sinister going on, or you literally haven't seen the game. And I don't mean to do that. I think you can have legitimate disagreements about basketball without sort of going to the other person who disagrees with me isn't seeing the games. But like if you are talking about her as a pure rebounder, when she's having this offensive emergence as a shooter, you're missing the point. And similarly, Angel Reese last year had one game with more than 3 assists in her entire season. And this year, she has already had 6 with at least 5 assists. In the last 3 weeks, she's had 4 at 6 or more, including she had a game with 11 assists. So again, people put an Alyssa Thomas comp on her at times, and I think that's brutally unfair because Alyssa Thomas is a very specific, very singular player. I also think there are ways in which I think Angel Reese has a chance to be a better player than Alyssa Thomas in terms of her overall range and in terms of her overall ability to affect the game from the mid-range in a way that AT just simply doesn't have the ability to do. Now, AT does some things from a passing perspective, but I don't think it'll ever be fair to ask Angel to do. Alyssa Thomas is right now the current leader in assists. My point is, like, there's a different shape to their game, and even within that context, being a 4-5 who is this able to find her teammates this early kind of blows my mind. Just kind of take me through what you're seeing of her in terms of her court vision.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, again, I get frustrated when I read all of these takes from people talking about Angel as if she doesn't know what she's doing on the court, when it's just so obviously not true if you watch any basketball.
Right.
I mean, she's able to get out there, and, people have been getting on her about, a bad pass she made in a game over the weekend. Everybody makes a bad pass every now and again. That's what happens when you're making as many passes as she's making, right? So you talked about how many assists that she's had. I think that it's really clear based on what I've seen in practice and also what Coach Tyler Marsh has talked about as well, that the team is really focusing on opening up opportunities for other players. Because at the end of the day, right, this also helps Angel, right? That way she's not always going to be the target of the defense from other teams. She's able to set up her teammates for success by drawing that attention on the inside and then being able to pass it out. So, we've also seen, we're talking about Angel, but, she's been facilitating some really incredible outside shooting from her teammates, right? Rachel Banham, I think, has gone on a multi-game streak with multiple threes in different games, and Angel Reese has had assists on, several of those. I mean, I think it's just clear that, she has like a real basketball IQ. Like, she is intelligent and she knows who to get the ball to get a score. She knows her teammates well. I mean, you can tell in practice, like, the playfulness that the team has, like, not that they're not being serious, but like the positivity and the encouragement that you see the teammates giving to one another, I think is really important for building a team that has the trust to be able to make those passes and create those assists.
Rachel Banham, happy birthday today.
Happy birthday, Rachel.
Rachel, you turned 32 today. I can't, as somebody who covered you in college, believe that. But yeah, she's been huge, obviously. Multiple 3-pointers, including 6 in one game over the last 5. Just doing things that Rachel Banham has done throughout her career and dating back to her University of Minnesota days. So we're going to talk about Rachel. We're going to talk about Hailey Van Lith. You had a terrific story on her as well. And just generally speaking about what's gone right and what needs to improve, because end of the day, Chicago 7-14 needs to make the playoffs, and in fact should be playing purely for the playoffs, not looking ahead because of the status of their draft pick, which is not dependent on their record. We'll get into that a little more, much more to come with Hope Perry. I'm Howard Megdal. You are listening to Locked On Women's Basketball. But first, Locked On Women's Basketball is brought to you by Hungryroot. Now, let's be honest, meal planning and grocery shopping can be overwhelming. Between busy schedules, picky eaters, I have plenty of them in my house, and trying to eat healthy, it is a lot. So Hungryroot is here to help. They take the stress out of planning by filling your cart for you with personalized groceries and meal options based on what you like and need. They use smart cart technology to recommend groceries, recipes, and even supplements tailored to your preferences. Whether you're hungry just for something dairy-free or gluten-free, focused on gut health, or just trying to eat better, Hungryroot's got you covered. Take advantage of this offer. For a limited time, get 40% off your first box plus a free item in every box for life, which will be longer, obviously, because you'll be eating through Hungryroot. Go to hungryroot.com/LockedOnNBA and use code LOCKEDONNBA. That's hungryroot.com/LockedOnNBA, code LockedOnNBA to get 40% off your first box and a free item of your choice for life. Howard Megdal here, Locked On Women's Basketball, joined by the great Hope Perry, who writes about the Chicago Sky for the Next. And Hope, you had the opportunity to spend some time with Hailey Van Lith, who I guess in this NIL era, it was inevitable. Has been through like all these different definitions of who she is as a player and people making sort of permanent decisions about that. She's a rookie in the WNBA. It just kind of blows my mind. But, take me through what are the most interesting parts of what you learned from HVL? Really interesting story you guys ought to read over at thenexthoops.com.
Yeah, Howard, I'm so glad that you brought this up. So I wanted to talk to Hailey because, I think right now we're in an era of expansion for the W right now, which I think is really exciting for a lot of reasons. And one of those reasons that, you've talked about, a lot of folks have talked about, right, is that it opens up more roster spots for talented rookies.
Mhm.
And so one of the things that Hailey and I talked about was the fact, what does it feel like to be a rookie in this league where it's so incredibly hard to earn and keep a roster spot? And she talked about how it kind of has like two sides to it. On one side, she said when she's having a bad day, it can feel like a lot of pressure, but she really tries to keep it positive and think about the fact that, like, hey, I have a roster spot in the most competitive league, in the hardest league to keep a roster spot in. And
Mhm.
I'm doing that. So how good
She
am I?
and related to that, she is obviously holding her own so far, and we're seeing some green shoots about what she can be. Ultimately, what do you think the medium-term goal is for where Chicago wants to get her to as a player? What role should she be occupying on this roster?
Yeah, so they've talked quite a bit about how she's kind of slotting into being a true one on this team, really playing the role of a point guard. And so they've been talking a lot about, nurturing her as a triple threat. When she gets the ball in her hand, she has multiple options. And, I talked to, her development coach. We talked a little bit about, the fact that it's normal for a rookie to have some ups and downs. I mean, she's getting minutes. The coaching staff clearly has trust in her. Her teammates clearly have trust in her. When she's out on the court, she is, running the offense, right? She's dribbling the ball up the court. She's making those calls from the top of the key. I think it's clear, her personality and the way that she moves within the organization. It's clear that she has a lot of potential for leadership down the line. And a lot of that is going to have to do with, as a rookie, settling into this league that really is so difficult to make the jump to. She's a talented basketball player and she's a really, really hard worker. And both she and the coaching staff have emphasized that. She has a bad game. She's back in the gym, ready to address it and wants to improve. And I think that that's a really, really invaluable asset. And, part of why she has so much promise in this league.
I have spoken to a lot of people around the league dating back to long before she got here, and the makeup was ultimately the thing that people thought was the number one reason why she could succeed to overcome size. I still think she's going to have to be a 35% plus 3-point shooter in order to carve out a regular role in this league. But the fact that she's playing the one, as you said, so early on makes a big deal. And it speaks to the larger question of kind of where Chicago is going. And just to set our final thoughts about this in place, you go by net rating, which to me is sort of the most useful way, quick and dirty, about where a team is. Chicago is 12th of 13 in the WNBA, a minus 8.8. Only Connecticut is below Chicago when it comes to that. However, that doesn't really tell the whole story or their arc. You go over the past 10, they are a minus 2.9. So they're pretty close to even. Over the last 5, they're a minus 1.1. Essentially means they are playing the league even. And it's worth remembering those 5 include 2 against the Minnesota Lynx. We're the very top of the league right now. So clearly the trajectory is where they need to go. The vibes you're talking about are very positive, but does this team need to make the playoffs for this to be considered a successful 2025?
That's a great question. And, folks on the team are really reticent to talk about the playoffs. I think until now, I don't think it's been super looming. It's been the first half of the season, the first half of the season. But now that we're approaching, the All-Star break, I think that it is a more imminent question. I think that how you measure success is going to be very subjective, right? Some people are going to look at those quantitative standards and say, you had this record, you had this many turnovers per game, and it's not good enough.
Mhm.
But I think that I personally don't know that they need to make the playoffs to have a quote unquote successful season, because I think that what I'm seeing, and I'm sure others will disagree, and I look forward to hearing about it. That's totally fine. But I think what I'm seeing is a lot of development happening. So you mentioned how over the last 5 games, right? So 2 of those games against the Minnesota Lynx, one on Saturday, they picked up the win, which was huge. This, a lot of people, they were playing at home, right? Which is an advantage, of course. Chicago fans love their team and are very loud. But at the same time, the Lynx are the best team in the league. They have Nafisa Collier, who's the captain of an all-star team. They're amazing.
Mhm.
But at the same time, I think what the Sky have really struggled with, there are 2 things. One of those is turnovers, and one of those is streakiness. And I think the fix to both of these is consistency, right? It's, about that Hailey Van Lith mindset that we talked about of getting back in the gym the next day and figuring out how to improve. So to me, I think we have seen a lot of improvement, because last night, even though the Sky dropped the game to the Lynx, if you were watching that game, you could see, at the beginning of the game, I think they went on a 28-5 run or something. I might be a little bit off on the numbers, but I mean, they were playing really well, and Angel Reese was contributing like crazy. I think
Mhm.
in each quarter of the game, she made up, something like a third of the points in each quarter for this. I mean, she was contributing on every part of the court. So to me, I don't think that they need to make the playoffs to be successful. Obviously, I think that they should want to make the playoffs and, have a goal to work towards. I don't think it's helpful as a team to be like, oh, well, we don't need to make the playoffs, so, let's not work. Like, I don't think that that's what's happening at all, even a little bit. I think that they're going to push 150% through the end of the season, wherever that may be. But personally, I don't think that playoffs are always going to be the number one marker of, was it a good season or not? I think the arc, like you said, is much more important.
I totally agree with you, and my view on this is identical to yours, which is, are we seeing growth out of Angel Reese? We clearly are, for all the reasons we talked about. Camila Cardozo is seeing growth and solidifying her game as well. The turnovers are not going away, even over
Yeah.
this last 5. They're at a 21.3 turnover percentage on the season. Last 5, which we talked about, where they've played about even, 21.6. So that hasn't really gotten better, but they don't have a point guard, right? Aren't you the point
Yeah.
guard now? Courtney Vandersloot is out. They haven't added anyone. I mean, they don't have a primary playmaker, to the point that, again, some of what Angel Reese is doing is absolutely development and growth, and some of it is just necessity, which will ultimately make her a better player long term, but again, isn't necessarily where you want her to be. I would just go back. I was talking to somebody about this yesterday, that there was a year early on in her career where Candace Parker led the WNBA in assist percentage. And, like, yes, an incredible passer, but no, that's also like a reflection of failure of roster management, when Candace Parker has to be the leader in assist percentage. So that's really, I think, the biggest thing holding them back to, let's say, earning one of those 8 spots. Final thought, just before we go, what is the number one thing maybe that we haven't yet talked about that you want people to know about where the Sky are or where they're headed?
Such a great question, Howard. I think that one thing that I've been really excited to see is how some of the veterans on this team have really come alive over the past stretch of games. So we had, Rebecca Allen had an incredible game against the Dallas Wings the night of Allie Quigley's jersey retirement. Rachel Banham has been having, I think, like I said, multiple games in a row with multiple threes. I mean, we're seeing these people, some of them come off the bench, some of them are starters. But we're seeing these veterans, really step in and take over that longer range shooting. And I think that's a really good sign for the Sky to see that this late in the season.
100% agree with you. Going to be fascinating to see. Everyone, make sure you're reading and following Hope Perry, who's doing fantastic work on the Sky Beat. That's all for today's show. I want to thank you for making us your first listen every single day. Be back with you tomorrow with Grant Afseth talking all things Dallas Wings. Until then, I am Howard Megdal, wishing all of you a wonderful Tuesday.
You are Locked On Women's Basketball, your daily podcast on women's basketball. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.